Hey there, Nick is here. In this video, we're going to build out a custom drop-down menu using Hotwire Stimulus and TailwindCSS. That's what we see here. And it's also going to be mostly keyboard accessible. For example, I can click anywhere to hide this menu as well as clicking on the triple dots, but I can also hit the escape key, which is going to make that menu disappear as well. This is thanks to a very new Stimulus 3.2.0 release, which includes the idea of keyboard event filters. Now, prior to Stimulus 3.2, you could have done this yourself, but you would have to have listened down for a specific key event like key down, and then you would have to have custom JavaScript that looks for specific key codes, like whatever escape is, I don't know, maybe 27 or something. And you would have to write in all that JavaScript to be like, if key code is 27, then do blah, 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 blah. But now, thanks to 3.2.0, we've got this new key event filter where we can do something like, key down.escape, then we can execute our stimulus controller. And there's a whole bunch of built-in filters over here for common keys that you might use. And if you want to use custom keys that's not in the list here, then you can always just modify this little constant here to add those in. And there's also some very nice modifiers here as well. For example, we can see here key down like Control+A to do a select all on a list box. This is a very, very, very nice quality of life enhancement here. And this is all thanks to a pull request from Nakajima Takayu. Sorry about the really bad pronunciation, but this was merged recently and released with Stimulus 3.2. And by the way, this example Docker Rails application is available on GitHub. I'll leave a link to this one in the description. Basically, it's a skeleton project that already has Hotwire Turbo and Stimulus installed. There's Action Cable, Tailwind, Postgres, Redis, etc., all rolled up into an example Docker application that you can just run Docker Compose up. And yeah, all I've done here was I've added some horizontal rules, and then we can focus directly on implementing this drop-down menu. So with that said, let's jump over here to some code and take a look here. All I've done is clone down the repo and added that drop-down code. And let's just start with the main event here, which is the stimulus controller. And yeah, I tried to keep this thing super minimal. You can see here it's only about 18 lines of code. Half of that is basically just squiggly braces and doing some imports here. And we can see here, there is a library that did get pulled in called L-transition. And all I did was add this to my package.json file here. Again, I'll leave a link to a blog post that's going to be in the description that'll have a full git diff of everything that changed with a little bit more explanation about certain things. But this L-transition is a very popular JavaScript library. Well, I shouldn't say very popular, whatever. It's a JavaScript library to basically add a very common thing you may have seen when you started looking at, I don't know, Tailwind UI examples or Tailkit examples, or just a lot of Tailwind in general. So for example, this is one of the free headers that you get with Tailwind UI. And, if we do a little drop-down menu here that they have, notice how you see a nice little transition effect here. This menu kind of just fades in, and then when you click away, it kind of fades out. And if we take a look at this code here, you'll see that to get that effect requires doing something in JavaScript. Like typically you might be using something like Alpine or Vue or React or something like that. But in our case, we're going to be using Stimulus. But there is this very common pattern here of entering from to and then leaving from to. And the idea here is you just add some transition CSS classes. These are coming from Tailwind to these events, and then everything is wired up. Honestly, I don't use Vue or React or Alpine. I don't know how that works. I just know from end user perspective of building web apps that I see this pattern a lot. And L-transition is like a 50-line JavaScript library that allows you to just add data attributes to the specific div or whatever you want to apply it to, and it will take care of the rest. And that'll make a little bit more sense once you jump back to the code here. But Tailkit is another, Tailwind UI alternative. And, this is basically where I got the styles for this dropdown. And you can see here too, there's kind of just, fades in, fades out. And if you go to their HTML over here, you can see that if you want to do the hide show with transitions, then they have an enter start end and a leave start end. Basically same pattern, slightly different labels here for the name, but that's not important. But in any case, same exact setup as basically over here. And yeah, L-transition is allowing us to do that type of thing as well. So if I go to the home page here and we take a look at that HTML, I'm going to load that below here. Just for now, we can see that all I did here is on this target menu, which we're going to get into in a second here. But, the important thing here around transitions is that all I did was just added data transitions. There's the enter start end and leave start end. And we've got our Tailwind CSS classes here. And you can tweak these if you want to do certain things, if you want the duration to be longer, or maybe the scale to be different, or honestly, whatever you want to do with Tailwind's transitions and animations and all that stuff. All you need to do is just pop in these transitions and you're good to go. But yeah, before we jump into that much detail, let's go and take a look here at the stimulus controller. So So yeah, L-transition, we are importing the leave and toggle functions that it gives us by default. And the idea here is when we call toggle, which by the way, mapping back down to over here, just I guess we should rewind a little bit. And I don't want to get into super basics about stimulus in general here, but this idea here is we have one div, and there's our data controller dropdown. This stimulus controller is called dropdown, and anything inside this div is basically associated to the stimulus controller that we see above here. And we can see here that we've got two different targets. We've got this button, which is a data dropdown target. And then we've got another target here too for the menu. So this is the different components of our dropdown menu. For example, if we go jumping over here, this triple dot SVG here is essentially the button. And then what we see here for the menu is the menu itself. And if we jump back down over here to the code, then we can see that, yeah, we have those two separate targets here, one for the menu, one for the button. And basically the idea here is using stimulus. We can see we have the data action there, and that documentation that we're looking at before, there's the key down escape. And what we're saying is, let's call the dropdown controller's toggle method over here, which is this method over here, which will just end up using L-transition's toggle effect on this menu target. So in this case, if we jump down here to the menu, we've got this data dropdown target to be menu. We've defined that here in our stimulus controller as menu. And just out of convention with stimulus, then this menu just becomes named menu target. This is all in stimulus's documentation. I'm trying to teeter on that line of basic things around stimulus and making sure you have enough to get going if you don't really know too much about stimulus. But in this case, yeah, we jump back to these actions over here, and we can see, when we click the dropdown itself, and this is going to be on the button, that is going to do the drop-down toggle. So if we click the button here, that is toggling it, right? On, off, on, off. And then we can see, going back to the code here, we also have another toggle here on key down escape. So technically, if I click the escape key, I'm muting myself, but you can see I'm clicking that key. It's actually toggling it. That's fine. Honestly, in my day-to-day, I do tend to hit escape a lot on certain sites, like YouTube supports hitting escape to get rid of that menu. So it's nice just to have that availability there. And then the other one is, on click window, then that is going to actually hide this thing. So what this means, basically, if I click anywhere in the window, it doesn't need to be on the actual button, then it is going to hide that. And that's the exact behavior that we want. And these are the actions here, and we can see them all set up, ready to go. That hide event is basically saying that if we are clicking anything but the triple dots, then we want to use the L-transition leave. And this is going to, again, just look at all these data transitions and, hide this basically. And this all depends on you having a class here called hidden on your target menu here. You can customize this stuff if you'd like, but that will require making some modifications to the stimulus controller to support a class other than hidden. Feel free to look at maybe L-transition's docs or stimulus's docs if you want to change that. But in my case, this example is very specific to using stimulus with TailwindCSS, and it supports the hidden class, so I didn't make that configurable in this case. But and maybe this will make a little bit more sense if we do a console.log, and then we'll just, let's do this, because this is going to result in a Boolean here. So I'm going to save that file here, make sure everything's reloaded. Yep, 38 milliseconds, great. And if I go to here and reload this page, and let's pop open this console log, we can see when I click anywhere, that's not the button. We got false as the report there. And if I keep clicking there, I think Firefox should show me, we can see, I click 3 times, I click on the Rails logo 4 times, 5 times, whatever. But now watch this. When I click directly on the triple dots here, now that actually reports true. And, that's going to continue reporting true as I click on that one. But if we go back to the code here, remember, like this hide event, we basically want to make sure that, it gets hidden when we click anywhere except for the triple dots, right? So if it's opened here and I click there, we want that to go away. But if I click on the actual triple dot button, we want that to actually be toggled, not so much just going away, because if it went away, then, we would never be able to see it in a reasonable way. So that's basically just how this little bit of logic works over here. And that's really, honestly, it for wiring up the stimulus controller. Now, there is another diff here in the code, just around, standard stimulus behavior here, where we just need to register this controller with stimulus.js. That's all this is here. It's just a relative path here to the dropdown controller here. In this index JavaScript file, we register it, blah, 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 blah. If you're using Rails, there's a generator to get that stuff auto-injected for you. But in this case, I just manually added it for the sake of that. But let's talk a little bit more about the HTML here, because there is a couple of things to go over here. So we went over that we have, two different targets, right? We've got the button target and the menu target itself. And And we'll go over these SVGs in a bit too. They're from hero icons. But yeah, let's see. Actually, is there anything else to go over in here? Not really. I mean, there's a lot of, stuff here. Oh, by the way, I should have mentioned too that I did set up little alerts here. So like, for example, if you click edit, then I just like, alerts and edit, and this one clicks a destroy here. It's not actually doing anything, just a little JavaScript alert, but you can do whatever you want in these events. Typically, in a drop-down menu like this, you're probably going to have just a link where the href is going to point to some location of your choosing here. But I did want to just mention that it's like mostly keyboard accessible in the sense that like, I can now hit the tab key here and I can tab between both of these. Like I'm just hitting tab, shift tab, tab, shift tab. And if I hit enter over that edit, it's actually going to execute that as well. That's just built-in behavior. I don't know if that's just browser behavior. I think it might be because I didn't write any code to do that. I don't know if Stimulus is doing that. But yeah, I just wanted to let you know that that works. But you might be thinking like, well, what about like arrow keys and stuff? Like the arrow keys do not work. And I don't know. I kind of felt like I wanted to draw the line somewhere in the fact that like, how often do you use arrow keys inside of a menu like that? Like you might, and that's a reasonable case, maybe in a different type of context, like, I don't know, like a multi-select or something like that, or a very keyboard-driven application. But I didn't want to go the extra mile to support that. That would require a little bit more JavaScript. Feel free to modify this example, maybe put it up in a gist, or, let us know in the comments below if you want to make that modification. But, in this case, I kind of figured, you know what, getting 90% of the way there is good enough for me, and I'm happy with the way this thing turned out in the end. But yeah, let me just go over the diff here just to make sure I didn't miss anything here. So if I do a git diff here, this is the diff between the baseline code repo and what we went over. So again, we register our controller here up top for the dropdown. Then we've got all of our HTML there with the hero icons. We'll go over those in a second here. And yeah, I just added that L transition library. And then this is also the lock file for the yarn file, auto-generated from tooling. But yeah, going back to, let me also zoom out of that. Cool. So going back to the hero icons over here. Yeah, so, somewhere in here, there's the triple dots. I don't even know what those dots were called. I don't think they were called dot. Oh, perfect. Okay. Ellipses vertical. There we go. So like, hero icons is really nice. It comes by default in this example Rails application if you'd like. Yeah, there's like a whole bunch of really high quality icons that you can use over here. And yeah, all you need to do if you want to just use them is like, for example, if you didn't want the triple dots, but you wanted, I don't know, maybe this thing or something like that, right? You can just copy the SVG, bring it down over here, replace one of these with this one. And yeah, that's it. Paste it in. Maybe we'll do with 4 instead of with 6. Like this is actually for that remove icon there. But, if I reload this, I just wanted to show you that you can just change that icon to be, this icon instead of the little trash icon that I had there before. But yeah, hero icons, very cool. But that's basically it for this drop-down menu. What I really like about this one is that, yeah, it's very lightweight, right? A couple lines of JavaScript. Yeah, I mean, you do need to pull in Hotwire Stimulus to make it all work. But once you have that, then you can build your application on top of that. And yeah, I've been finding like, I don't know, man, the Hotwire Stimulus combo, like it almost feels like cheating in certain ways because there's so many little snippets that you can do where it's like you just add 15 lines of code, 25 lines of JavaScript, and you've got this really cool, like great behavior, like copy to clipboard, or maybe like autofocus an element after a certain thing, or like, maybe have a flash message disappear after 5 seconds on its own, or you click the X button, little things like that. Like it's a very manageable library, but I'm not trying to sell you on using it. I'm just letting you know, like, here's what I did to do a drop-down menu. Let me know in the comments below if you can improve it in some ways. That'd be awesome. And if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up because it really does help a lot. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you in the next video.